Okay, another day, another new toy. So this is the Honda ADV 150. It's sort of the more off-road-ish oriented version of the Honda PCX. I presume same engine. Um, what else can we say about this? I think the things that make it off-roady are the rear shocks. The tires are a bit more off-roady, and generally the bodywork is just a bit more sort of substantial. Not sure why that makes it off-roady, um, but obviously it's been given sort of like an adventure bike kind of styling, sort of sort of a cross between a scooter and a adventure bike, but still it's mainly a scooter. But let's give this one a go and see what we think. So let me just stash my bag. First thing you've got to deal with is this annoying, well, I'll comment more on this later, but this keyless system, which is not my favorite thing in the entire world. Let's see if I can close this on the wire. Hopefully that's still recording. So here we go. Every time I get on this bike, you have to do this little dance with the keyless ignition, which I'm not a massive fan of. But anyway, let's comment more on that a bit later. Let's just go for now. Go for a little ride and see how this feels. I mean, I have been riding this now for about a day or so. Gave back the Vespa, when was it? A couple of days ago, and just picked this one up as a replacement. I was just curious, really, just to see what, you know, whether this was substantially different from other kind of maxi scooters that I've ridden before. Certainly is marketed differently. And let me get past these kids first. These children tend to make sudden moves which kind of freak me out sometimes. Okay, we're past the kids, past the first obstacle. Second obstacle, someone's parked right outside my road. Okay, let's go, we're clear to go. So it's certainly marketed differently than, say, a regular kind of maxi scooter. You know, Honda's trying to market it as more to the adventure crowd. So it's supposed to be a scooter that you can do some light touring on, maybe even a little bit of kind of light off-roading, but I'm not really sure if I would take this off-road, to be honest. But anyway, the point is it's marketed to different to a regular sort of commuter scooter, and they're trying a few different things, which I like. For people who want something a bit different to a regular scooter but aren't quite ready to jump to an adventure bike, or maybe an adventure bike just isn't practical for what they need to do day to day, which I think, you know, for Bali type of riding around, a big old adventure bike probably wouldn't make much sense. So this is sort of, you know, somewhere in between those two things, although again I say skews more heavily towards the scooter side of things than the adventure bike side of things. So immediately my first impressions of coming off the Vespa are has a lot less character. In fact, I was a little bit sort of deflated when I got on this, to be honest. The Vespa obviously has bags and bags of character, both I think in terms of the visual appeal. Obviously mine was bright orange, and you can get them in a variety of bright colors, and also the actual riding experience as well is quite, I would say, quite, you know, has character as well. There's something very sort of zippy about the Vespa. I don't know what how really to describe it other than that. Very zippy, very kind of very nimble to kind of chuck around the road. Not to say that this isn't nimble. I mean, it's still this one's still a very light bike. It's 130 kilos, I think, something like that. So you can still throw this one around the road, no problem. This, to me, just feels like regular old maxi scooter. Nothing wrong with that, of course. They're extremely popular in this part of the world, and for good reason. You know, they're reliable, they are easy to ride, and they have a bit more road presence than, say, you know, the bike in front of me, which is a Scoopy, which is also another popular model, but they're a little bit smaller, so they get, you know, they're a little easier to miss on the road in terms of the road presence. They're lighter, so they get blown around in the wind and stuff. So a lot of people opt for these things, which are a maxi scooter. Obviously, there's the Yamaha M-Max, which is really popular, and the Honda PCX, which is really popular as well. And this is just basically just an upgraded version of that. Again, as I said at the start, bodywork slightly bigger, more off-roady tires, better shocks, keyless ignition, maybe a couple of other things. Oh, it's got this fly screen, which I don't really think does much. I was riding yesterday at, you know, fairly high speeds along a dual carriageway, and you know, going about maybe 80-90 kph, and I could feel the wind pushing my chest quite strongly. So I don't think this fly screen does anything to prevent wind buffeting. It's more for the kind of off-roady looks rather than anything else. I mean, if you look at the position, I don't know, it feels like it's in the wrong position to offer any kind of wind protection whatsoever. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's been given this sort of like off-roady visual treatment, which is nice, but you know, I don't think that really translates into any sort of different riding experience, to be honest. It's still a fairly generic maxi scooter. When I say it just feels like a maxi scooter, you know, that's a good thing. I mean, they're good bikes for Bali. They have, you know, a decent road presence. They are easy to ride. Really smooth engine. Not quite as smooth as the Vespa, I think. So yeah. Don't take any. I'm sounding a bit negative, but you know, I'm actually measuring this against a very high bar, I think. So I think it's still a great bike. I guess the question is, you know, I should have looked into the pricing of these machines, but the question, I guess, would be, would you pay, you know, a little bit extra? Would you pay the premium to, you know, buy this over just a regular PCX or Yamaha M-Max? And you know, the answer to that is I'm not really sure. Depends how much you really value those kind of off-roady little extra visual features. Me personally, I think I would rather put my money into the kind of thing that we just passed, which would be a nice Vespa. If we're talking about spending a bit more money than the average, you know, maxi scooter. Again, the beach is closed. I'm taking almost exactly the same route as I did with a Vespa. I'm just on autopilot right now. I think I need to pick a different route next time. Let's turn around, and I'll actually go a completely different way. Can I turn around in here? Probably. I did take a passenger on this yesterday, and that passenger has also been on the Vespa. So I did ask, you know, what do you think is more comfortable? Do you think this or the Vespa is more comfortable? I tried to ask it in as a non-leading a way as possible. And the answer from my passenger was a resounding, the Vespa is a lot more comfortable. And I think I can understand, because if you look at the back of this scooter, if you look at the passenger seat, it's a typical maxi scooter design, which sort of tapers, you know, if you can imagine the back of this guy's scooter that I'm looking at right now, the passenger seats sort of all kind of taper at the back, which I would imagine is not that comfortable. I can't remember if I've actually sat on one of these things. Where are you going, dude? But the Vespa, on the other hand, is the opposite. The Vespa actually gets wider at the back. So it's got this sort of light bulb shaped seat, if you can imagine, where the passenger's actually sitting on the large part of the light bulb. So I would imagine that's very comfortable to sit on. So I can understand when someone's, you know, immediately answers, yeah, the Vespa is a lot more comfortable. I shouldn't really be comparing this directly to the Vespa. I don't think that's a fair comparison. They're different bikes really for slightly different purposes. I mean, they're still both scooters, but it's difficult to not compare when I've literally just dropped off the Vespa and then picked this one up on the same day. So that's the only reason why I'm comparing them. Otherwise, I don't think it would make sense to you know, to make so many direct comparisons. Engine-wise, it's fine. It accelerates when you need it to. It's perfectly, yeah, it's a perfectly sort of standard and I guess a little bit mundane maxi-scooter engine. I will say the brakes are excellent. The brakes are probably, I would say, a lot better than the Vespa. Now, I don't know if that's anything to do with the actual braking engineering, or if that's just because these brakes are newer, this has had a service recently, I don't know. But these brakes are really good. I also think I prefer the brake levers themselves a bit more on this. They just feel a bit more, I don't know, there's just a certain sort of, they're reassuringly large, I think, is the reason I like them. What else can I say? Okay, so a couple of things that I don't like about this, that you know, everything I've said so far, it sounds like I'm basically just a bit meh about, which is fair enough. I don't think this is really meant to, you know, blow anyone away with its personality or anything like that. So I think it's fine to be overall meh about it, as long as it gets the job done. A couple of things I just flat out don't like though. One would be this keyless ignition system. So instead of a key, it's got this thing, which basically, I mean, it's similar to how other keyless ignition systems work that I've used, at least, where once you're near the car and you've got once you're near the bike and the key is in your pocket, then you're allowed to flick the ignition on. So you don't have to put the key physically in the bike, which some may say is, you know, is a plus point, I guess. But basically, yeah, you've got this dial which is only activated when the key is near, and the dial has a couple of different settings. So in one setting you can open the seat for the luggage space, storage space, and in the other setting you're allowed to actually, you know, switch on the ignition. And I don't know, to me, I just don't really get it. It seems that every time I want to get on the bike, I just have to faff around a bit too much. Maybe that's because I haven't got used to it, or maybe that's because, yeah, it's just making you go through just too many damn steps to do what you need to do. One thing this does better than the Vespa is these bumpy roads, like this sort of pseudo off-road, well, not off-road, but just this bad road. Always remember this Ewan McGregor quote from Long Way Round, where they say bad roads are worse than off-road, which is absolutely true. So this is an example of a bad road, which is just sort of cobblestones, and half the time the cobblestones are loose or just missing. And on the Vespa, if you saw in my previous video, this road was absolute torture. Every single little bump in the road you could feel in the tiny little wheels of the Vespa, which I think also had very hard suspension. But this, you know, I don't know what the suspension set at. I don't know if it's really what you would call off-roady. Oh, look at this girl's Vespa and matching helmet. She looked wonderful. I don't know if you'd call this really off-roady suspension, but it certainly soaks up the bumps in a bit more of a comfortable way than the Vespa did. So that's one plus point. Oh, something just flew right into my eye. There's a lot of particulate in Bali when you're sort of riding around. So I've actually taken to riding with goggles almost every time I go out. This time I forgot them, and you really notice just, you know, little bits of dust or whatever flying into your eyes. And I'm wearing spectacles, so I honestly don't know how people do it when they're riding without a helmet, without any eye protection whatsoever. Surely they must just get absolutely bombarded with crap in their eyes all the time. I don't understand. But when I'm riding with goggles, it's amazing. It's just so comfortable, and, you know, just protected from the sun, protected from all the particulate. It's awesome. 10 out of 10 would recommend. So let's do the one thing that I think this bike does better. Again, let's just go back the other way. Famous Canggu shortcut. I wouldn't say that I'm really sort of sailing over these bumps like I'm on a cloud, but it is definitely more comfortable than the Vespa, and I can also hear the bike is, you know, the bike is not shattering to pieces as I ride, unlike the Vespa. Apparently you can also stand up on this bike and ride, like, you know, like an adventure bike. I did try that. I say apparently because I saw in one of the promo videos they had a guy on this scooter, you know, doing a bit of like off-road, and you know, he was standing on the you know, what do you call it, the footboard, like you would stand on the foot pegs of an adventure bike. I tried it, but it just felt weird. Your feet are too far forward, really, on a scooter like this. So it just felt a bit strange. Standing on foot pegs is a lot more comfortable because your feet are basically kind of underneath your shoulders. Whereas if you imagine how I'm sitting right now, you're sitting on a chair basically on a scooter, so your feet are in front of you. Look at this dog's tail just sort of dragging along the road. I guess you can't feel it. So yeah, the standing position, yeah, I don't think that's a real thing. I think that's more of a marketing gimmick than anything else. Would not recommend standing up whilst riding on this bike. Don't think it's meant for that. Just feels all wrong in terms of your body position. So I've got this bike for another about 10 days or so, and then I'm swapping it for a proper bike, going back to proper bikes. I think I've had my fill of scooters for now. I think they're very convenient. I love having the luggage space, and it's, I think, a bit nicer for passengers to sit on, especially as far as the smoothness of the ride. Not that you can't ride smoothly on a manual bike. I think down to the individual rider, I guess, to ensure the smoothness of a ride on a manual bike. But yeah, going back to a proper bike after this, quite looking forward to that one. It's a Yamaha XSR 155, which I've heard good things about. I'm sure I will miss the convenience of the luggage space and the automatic gearbox, but I think the fun factor will make up for it. Okay, that's all from me. I think I'm going to stop and have some dinner if I don't get run over by that car. I'm going to stop here, I think. Oh, no, they're closed. Okay, fine.